regenerates at a cost then eventually. Young Wolf has Undying. Voice of Resurgence does its thing. Strangleroot Geist undies. Scavenging Ooze is just awesome. And then Geist of St. Traft has Hexproof. And then even if your guy is gonna die, or otherwise you just like want to get extra value, you can rapid hybridization your own guy, make another 3/3, and get the extra value out of him. So resilient creatures versus very aggressively costed creatures. Let's see how it goes. I would say the play draw matters quite a bit for this matchup. Looks like Aaron was on the play.
And that's an Imposing Sovereign.
That is a cool card.
Little seen card from M14.
It's only really seen play in like the mono white human aggro deck.
Right.
It's cool to see it in a Naya shell.
And that card, creatures your opponent control enter the battlefield tapped.
Makes it a lot harder to block, a lot harder to race, and even things like haste creatures just don't work anymore, like Strangleroot Geist, for example, in this matchup. The rapid hybridization token, if you try and like kill your own guy and ambush something with a 3/3, can't do it. And we see a Boros Reckoner. It's kind of cool. He's got all his a bunch of his cards with extended art, or border-breaking art, or whatever.
Imposing Sovereigns. We've shown 2 cards on the screen, and they're both by Scott M. Fisher. That one I could not have told you, but it is a beautiful piece of art. So Aaron has Rancored up his Voice of Resurgence and is swinging away, but no follow-up creature. Nicholas attacks with his Reckoner and Imposing Sovereign.
He just Feeling of Dreads the Reckoner to get in for 4, which is usually indicative of a hand with a bunch of more similar effects, like tempo gaining effects, where he's going to try and close it out with this card, or with this creature. And that looks exactly like what he's trying to do here, as he has yet another turn without a follow-up.
And even if he did have a follow-up creature, it's going to enter the battlefield tapped because of Imposing Sovereign. That
also true.
Again, these cards that you don't see very often can kind of throw you off. Like, I'm not sure how to play around this card because I haven't had to do it yet.
Yeah, I know how to play against Huntmaster of the Fells. I don't know how to play against Imposing Sovereign, So here we see another voice. In response, Feeling of Dread, so that an elemental doesn't pop its way out. But that voice stands in the way of the other voice quite well, and then the token comes into play tapped.
So that's going to
come into play tapped as well.
Okay, yeah. He
attack for 4, so he has another Feeling of Dread to prevent it from, ambush with the Selesnya Charm. Put a Reduke token into play, and presumably block.
Aaron, if he remembers, is going to get a token off of his Voice of Resurgence.
He is reaching for a token, and
that's also tapped. Tap the token.
Tap it now.
I'm reaching for the screen.
Yeah, you guys can't see Ricky's actually leaning over the table trying to tap it through the monitor.
Well, when you play racing games, don't you start leaning to the left and right?
No, my mom does though.
Okay.
So there we see a trade. Rancor goes back to Aaron's hand. Another elemental comes out. That one is also tapped.
This Imposing Sovereign has done a lot of work this turn. Tapping the Strangleroot Geist, so nullifying the haste, and now tapping those 2 XX elemental tokens, which are currently 3/3s. It's going to allow Nicholas to possibly attack here, but he's taken quite a lot of damage, so
he is all the way down
to hold back.
He's all the way down to 4. And his opponent has a Rancor in hand, so he's got to have quite a few blockers here if he's
locks it on
going to want to survive.
Strangleroot Geist. That might give him the ability to attack with some of his creatures.
I would say the Imposing Sovereign at the very least can get in. Looks like he's going to leave it back. Feeling of Dread, your team, you're dead. All 3 Feeling of Dreads.
So you called it there. You said that it was a hand with a lot of similar effects. It turns out that the similar effect was just
the same card.
More Feeling of Dreads.
Yeah, Ricky, I used to be pretty good at this game. Yeah, the way that effect sort of snowballs, it's a kind of I don't want to say linear game plan. It's kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
I think think it's a linear game.
It's just like a straightforward game plan.
Once you start tapping their guys and attacking, you want to keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
because if you give them,
you can't really change gears from that. Like either they die, or if they don't die, then you're behind so many resources because you spent multiple turns worth of mana and multiple cards just tapping down to get in a little damage. Where like if you don't finish them off, then you're down all of those resources with little to show for it. So once you're in that mode, you're sort of stuck in that mode. And Aaron, thankfully for him, he had all 3 copies of Feeling of Dread and was able to close it out.
But even then, you said, if you cast these Feeling of Dread types cards, you get behind on the board. He actually didn't get behind on the board because of Voice of Resurgence.
Yeah.
The trigger from Nicholas casting a spell, and then the death trigger left behind 2 3/3s.
Voice is a powerful card, let me tell you. And that's the key, is that all of Aaron's creatures are so resilient, as I said when we first looked at the deck list, that he can really trade off guys, like trade off creatures fairly profitably, especially with Rancor. Anytime that he can get into a situation where he's essentially 2-for-1ing, if he's like trading off a voice for, let's see, it was 2 damage and 2 elementals and the 2/2 token.
Yeah.
That's a pretty profitable exchange. It's like a 4-for-1. Because you get the Rancor back anyway, right? Like,
again, your math is confounding me, but we'll go with 4-for-1. So here we go. Nicholas Werner is down a game here against Aaron Barich. They're both at 6-1, close to a must-win situation if you want to make top 8 here.
Yes.
In this very large tournament in Atlanta.
Yeah, backs against the wall, elimination round. And
so what is Nicholas going to bring in to even the score here? He's got unflinching courage, not exciting when you've seen Feeling of Dread.
Yeah, it's a card that's like pretty good at racing, but not good at answering the type of cards. Because I mean, Nicholas may not know, but look at Aaron's deck list. He's got like Unsummons, Cynic Charms, and Feeling of Dreads, and Rapid Hybridizations, and Selesnya Charms. Like, he has just a ton of ways to blow out an Unflinching Courage.
Yeah.
So even though on paper it looks like a good way to race, I agree that it's not actually going to be that great in this matchup. Scavenging Ooze is actually going to be awesome because it can both grow very quickly and gain life to help race, and it can actually take out the backside of these Undying creatures if they, try and trade off or what have you, and come back. Then Rare Revelation doesn't really do much, doesn't exactly do what you want it to against Rancor. Selesnya Charm, probably fine, probably not going to come in, but it might just to shore up some numbers. Pillar is actually very good. Kills Experiment 1, Young Wolf, Voice, and Strangleroot Geist, and Ooze if you're lucky. Pillar is actually going to be very, very good for Nicholas post-board, and then Mark of Mutiny probably not coming in.
One card in his main deck that we did not see get played game 1, but will have an effect here for Nicholas Werner is Dryad Militant. We saw the flashback on the Dread Returns come into play. If he can land a turn 1 Dryad Militant, that takes away the back end.
Yes, it does. It stops the Feeling of Dread. It doesn't look like he has any Snapcasters or anything, so that's the only thing it does, but that is quite a powerful effect. I mean, had he played a Dryad Militant on 1, Nicholas would have won that game easily. Like, very easily, if all those Feeling of Dreads were halved. If we look at Aaron's sideboard, he's got a Near-Hit Pilgrim, which probably is just coming in just, for any generic aggro deck, as well as a Sigarda maybe, a Garruk Relentless probably coming in, Unflinching Courages of his own maybe coming in, and a Scavenging Ooze probably coming in as well. So just fixing up some numbers from both sides for the creature matchup.
So Nicholas Werner started off the game with a tapped Rootbound Crag. On turn 2, cast an Experiment 1 and has not played a second land. He Pillar of Flames away.
Brutal. He missed again and just pillared.
And this could be over very quickly as Aaron Barich
He did draw a land that turn, but he didn't have anything to do with it. Just a Dryad Militant, which does threaten to trade with the Geist, theoretically, but the odds of that actually going through as planned are fairly low. And Unflinching Courage on Geist the Saint Traft is a blowout. Nicholas taking 8, Aaron gaining 4 here. That's going to be tough to erase.
Would you have attacked with that experiment one there? I think holding them both creatures back when you've seen all, well, I guess he hadn't seen all kinds of these effects.
Yeah,
only
like
the Feeling of Dread.
It's
which
Selesnya
taps 2
Charm
creatures.
also is +2/+2. Yeah, like there are a couple arguments for that. Wow, he did bring in Unflinching Courage, and he just gets unsummoned. Beta unsummoned, that looked like.
It did look like a beta unsummoned.
And as we were saying in sideboarding, Unflinching Courage, while it may look good on paper, all you're really doing is opening yourself up to blowouts and being prone to a lot of different blowouts from Aaron's deck, and that's exactly what happens. Not that he was going to be able to race the Unflinching Courage Geist of St. Traft anyway, after missing land drops. I didn't see the hand he kept, but it's not been too great.
Well, he had the Rootbound Crag, a 1-drop,
And a pillar. And probably
Well, he also had the Dryad Militant.
Probably had the Militant.
But on the play, when Rootbound Crag is your first land, you're already
feel like
behind a
feel like you
turn.
gotta just go to 6, right?
Sure. It's always easy to say, just small again.
Yeah.
after the fact or from the booth.
Yes.
When you're in the moment, when you're sitting there and you're looking at your hand,
Yeah.
it's good.
You
enough.
just see the potential. You see how
Sure.
it could unfold, and you're like, could be good. What if I draw exactly all these perfects?
If that had been a shock land instead of the Rootbound Crag,
Would have been
most certainly
much better keep. Yeah.
a much better hand.
Yeah. If that were a Stomping Grounds, it's probably a fairly easy keep, right? You get to go in Spearmint 1, Militant / Pillar, even if you miss the land drop on 1 and 2. That's pretty good. And then the other on turn 3. That's pretty good.
All right, so back here in the booth, Ricky Hayashi, AJ Soccer, we just saw